Hi, in this video I will show you how to read a dataset or show a dataset on a website with Angular. So this is my example. What we see there, these data are from a ASP.NET Core web server running now on this machine, and I show you the dataset, the model, and the transmission to the client. And this is to show how one dataset is shown. In this case, I'm doing some time record sets selected by a date, and there's a giving in the driving time and minus a pause time, and then we have a duration. So this is elements from these are Angular elements, and you see they are calculating this stuff. So how does it work? In the background I have an ASP.NET Core server running. I show you first the interface. This is my ASP.NET Web API Core server. Inside there we have a record set. That's a record set. In ASP.NET you always have a model, and inside the model you say simply I have a small data class. That's different from Angular. You're really designing here some classes, model classes, and you say there, as always, you have an ID, you have a user ID. In this case I don't need it. Project, activity, something of date, time. So this is a record set of date, time. Which says okay, it's a date and the time additionally there, some float values, and this question mark always is there's also null possible. I also show you now the server which is behind there or connected or as a local server on there. So we see there the database. And now I have to look it up so that I'm not calling the wrong stuff. It's this one. And we have a table there, and now in the table, that's the first we go to the design view data. That's the view data. Show me the data. You see there is this is our data date time values. It's actually null sometimes, and there's driving time. It's also as a float, calculated as a float, and the ID as a long integer, and this is string format. And in the ASP.NET Core, what you do there, you always create a time a dataset context. So my web server connects the data on this dataset, which I've just shown you, like this one. It connects the data and gets the data by entity framework. Now, this is our model, as I said. Then we have the context. The context goes there. This is automatically constructed. It says okay, it's a model builder, and the model builder takes the data and moves that data to the controller. So this is the model, the entity framework or connection called as context, and the context goes to the controller, and inside the controller you have those web API routes, where the API, where you say okay, this is my website time records, for example, / something, and here in this case it's API record sets and then the ID. And the ID, whenever you call the website and say /5, you will get you will come to this method. The controller comes in there. Maybe I set a breakpoint now there, and the method itself you may give it a name. In this case it's get timer record, and internally that's the ID. Then you say await, give me the context, give me the record sets from this table, find the ID, or find first record by the ID, and then give the result as JSON out to the data. So I'm moving this aside. When my front end gets the calls that data on this address, then there's a web API client which does simply the following. It goes to the address. This is now the Swagger front end, the data structure which shows the data structure, and then we see this is the HTTP get records, all of the records, and then give me one record, and this is the response. You simply type API time records and then the ID, and you will see there comes back a record set. Now this is our front end and our data, and now we come to our and that's the just documentation of all that stuff. Now how does it work in there? I'm moving this aside. We are now here in our project, in our Angular project. In the Angular project, we also have, in this case, time records model TS. It's not really necessary, but I tried to work the same way. Inside the model TS, you have an export interface. So an interface which has the same data in there. And you see that's the ID with a number. Number is of type, is a JavaScript type, which is it is there, that's float, integer, and all that stuff is inside there. Then you have a lot of string. You see that's with a capital S written. So this is the string is, it's I'm not sure, it's an interface like this, like the date. It's also interface. Interface means it's not really there all the time. You may call it whenever you use it. You don't have to do new date all the time, but you should do. Then you have number and all that stuff and date ID, and that's also date. Okay, now we have here a model inside a file which is called .model.ts. And now we have, I'm moving now to my component. I hope that you also are confirmed with the components in Angular. In Angular we have the following. We go first to I will show you the single record which comes in there. Inside our component TS, which is my code behind file. Inside there we do the following. We implement onInit, and from the onInit we also have on one model which is called or one variable which is of type time record, and the time record is this one. So this is I have this time record, and this is of type time record. So I have the interface and the data structure in there. It's not really necessary, but it's quite good for getting the data. Then you have then I have a lot of local variables. We need those local variables because we want to show the local variables on the outside. So this is our outside. That's the HTML file. That's the code behind file, front end file, and back end code behind file. And inside in the front end file or HTML, you will see here that's, for example, ng model. We bind the data to the front side. So this is what we see here when we have something like this, an input field of in the material structure. It's a material is a design component given in Angular. As it's signed, you may select there, so underscore and so on. That's beautiful stuff. You connect the front end by saying ng model brackets is connect this one to the variable behind, so connect it to this one. So whenever you change something in here, it will change in the background. It's quite good, and you may do that also by, now it's a lot of stuff, a lot of code. You have this, for example, here on my date start. This is if you have some string variables. This is if it's like here, like a number, like a time number or like a date here. These variables, what you see there, are of type string. That's important. It's not of type. The system doesn't work when you use it in a date time coming from your SQL server. In SQL server you have date time. So this is here our date time, and you see that date time. The system doesn't work with this one. And what we do there is, that's why we bind the front end to a variable in the code behind. Now, you see, we have those variables. We have the original ones, which are similar to our record set. And then we have some string variables and calculation variables, all this different stuff. And then you have the constructor. And inside the constructor is the method which is called by whenever this component, when the component is called. So component is this one, this in this square block on the right side. That's the component inside. And this, when this component will be opened, then it calls it implements the onInit and the onDestroy. And when it is constructed, or when it's before the view comes, it says, okay, I need a service at the code behind. So we'll switch here to a service file as an injection. That's called injection. Whenever you when this component is opened, it also calls it gives it a service with it, and it also gives an activated root. The activated root is the URL which you see on the front here. That's the activated root. So whenever you have this one, inside the constructor, open and close bracket, drop those lines in there, and then you may ask from the root, what is my ID? So when the record set opens, or when the component opens, it calls the ng onInit. That's the ng onInit. You say here onInit, implement onInit, and then you get ng onInit. So when you make a breakpoint there, no, not in here, then the system comes in there. Then you say this, from this activated root, the params subscribe, give me the ID. So give me the ID and write it into the local model. So this is in my local variables. Write it to my variables which are in my component. And then you say, and then load from the local method, load the dataset. Now we come to the dataset. We now know our ID, and now we say, okay, we say, that's a bit complicated. We say, give me from a web client, which I will explain, give me the dataset with a corresponding ID. And this is TypeScript in Angular. It says, okay, merge, do some methods behind. So first start with the record set with a result of nothing. Then give me load a data and switch switch the empty array which is inside, and then look up if there's an error, and after this, when you have connected the data, give me the response, which means load the data. So this is only the observable, which is like the HTTP web client, and then we say pull that stuff and give that stuff to my local record set model. And then you say map the data. So if you have a date time value, split it into two strings, and do some calculations. That's why we have here the map data. Now the key element in here is give me the data set. And this is now we have, what we did is we have the models and the time model. Now I also created ng model create a service, and inside the service I said, okay, this is of type HTTP, inject here the HTTP client. So this is the constructor, inject as an HTTP client, which is a model stuff from Angular. And this HTTP client was there you have to say, give me the dataset. There's one method which I say get dataset. That's the public method. And you say here time record service dot get dataset. That's the same what we have there. Here it is. Get dataset. Give with the ID number, that's what we got on the front end. And then of type observable, that's why we have the subscribe method there. And the observable of type record set. So the system tries to get back a record set, but you should not, this type record set is not really it's not always really of type record set. There are also strings in there. It's not obligatory that it's a time record set. There are variables inside. It's a JSON string which will be get back. And then you say return from this HTTP, which is here coming in for this HTTP client. First method is get a time record set from an URL. So it's the API address, which is written here somewhere. There's in a private variable, and from there /ID. Then as soon as you did this, then you make a pipe. Pipe is following action. Make a pipe and give inside there a map. Map is you may try to give the response which you have there, map that stuff to a type of time record. So in from the JSON there comes a lot of stuff that's JSON format, and you may try to get the JSON web API stuff to of type record set. So this is the map command. And then we are back there. As soon as if you are done this, you will get the result. It's calculating the errors, and from there it says that's the subscribe. It says here give me that back the data set of type record set, and then map data. So that's what we do here. We have those results, and as soon as we hover over this edit, you see in the left corner over there, you see it tries time record dot edit dot /1. That's what happens in here, and now it's loading the data. So inside and there's a breakpoint in there because we set this breakpoint. Now our request comes into our web server, and the web server says, okay, here somebody asks me for the ID, and the ID is 1. And now we say, when we step through, we say, okay, my server find asynchronous. So it's not blocking the system. Await the result find async. And as soon as it has this one from the dataset, so server is very intelligent. It's ASP.NET Core. From Microsoft, this is really intelligent. You see there the results in runtime. You see it gives a null. There's a date time. So this is date and time, null, and a string. And then it says, okay, it returns this value. Now it moves that stuff as a as a JSON format to our front end. Now let's have a move on this before I throw this to our front end. I will make here a bronze. Let's check that these values. Now we go to the console, and inside the console now nothing happened. And as soon as I run that stuff or go on with that stuff, let's continue. Then you see it's loading our stuff, and there's a message coming from there. Now we are on our client, and we have here the console, and now we have a lot of stuff here. And as soon as you double click on there, you will see this is our console commands. Whenever you say something in console in Angular, whenever you say in our model, maybe I can't see it here console.log, then you see this one as, I have to move it away, move this one away. Now we are in the console command. That's what we see there. There's our console. You click on there, and now you see what's coming in. And now when I make a breakpoint in there, for example, and did it stop here? Maybe I have to reload it. As soon as it comes in there, now the breakpoint should come there. It's still there. We move it. Come on. Oop, where's it gone? Oh, it's there. Now you see the values are coming in, and you have all those values now in there. You see this is our result, which is coming back. This time record set is of this time, because that's JSON time or JavaScript time with a T. It's a date, ISO time, year dash month dash day, and then the time splitting, and then you have this. If you have not really set up this one, you will get general mean time. So this is a GMT will be written in there. It's a string. You see there's a string apostrophes, and you get this as a result now from the map data is the value which is coming from a JSON result from the web API, and that's why you have to split it now up. And now we jump through with the F8. F8 was going through. Now you split it up into a string, and then the strings will be shown there. So that's how it works, and I've documented all my stuff on. All the code is written on here on my website, and you will find that code on the link below the video, and you may use it for your own web API connection, writing a connection in ASP.NET Core and showing the dataset inside there.